Today, we are going to be creating a Power BI report using a case study of Apple, the Apple company, Apple Incorporated. We're going to be using a case study using Apple Incorporated to build a Power BI report. Now, let's be very clear. The data that we're going to be using is not going to be actual Apple data. The data that we're using in the Power BI report is not going to be actual Apple data. However, I do want you to get a good feel for what if you get on the project and you're trying to understand what type of data that the company is actually looking for. So we're going to be, initially what we're going to be doing is doing some research. We're going to do some research. The research is going to entail an actual annual report, the actual 10K, 10Q and annual report that's available to the public out there on the Apple website. We're going to be using the actual 10K, 10Q annual reports for the 10Q, which is the quarterly report, and the 10K is the actual annual report for Apple. We are going to be looking at the Apple website. We're going to be looking at the Apple website, doing research on the Apple website. Then we're going to be creating the Power BI report, but the Power BI report will not have actual data from Apple. I don't even have access to actual data from Apple. But we will be creating we'll be creating the Power BI report using simulated data that's very similar to the data that a department within the Apple Corporation would be using. Now, real quick, just a little housekeeping. If you don't mind, like this video, subscribe to this channel. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. In addition to, if you want to join my community and have access to data sets that are being used here in this report and other reports that we have, that we also have on other videos, access to the video, access to the data sets, access to the newsletters, access to our Power BI job portal, access to our live events, our webinars, our free webinars, because I do have free webinars every Thursday from 7:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, that time does change every now and then, but if the time changes, I do send out a notice saying, hey, we're changing the date for this particular week. But if you want access to the community, scan the QR code and input your email information, and we will get you into our community. With that said, we're going to jump right over into our case study and building the Power BI report using an Apple case study. Back to this end result. So this is going to be the end result. So we're going to start here, and then but this is only so that we can see what the end result is going to look like. And then we are going to analyze the data so that we can see how that data, where we could actually be looking for data in the annual report. And then we're going to bounce back into actually creating this Power BI report. Again, I want to emphasize this report is not in any way should any way be considered to be the actual annual report for Apple, because it's not. This is only what we're using as a teaching tool. Okay, it's only what we're using as a teaching tool. The annual report is public information. It's data that I pulled right off the Apple website. It's not some information I stole from anywhere. So that's just to be 137% transparent with you. But looking at this particular Power BI report, and basically having some understanding of who Apple is as a company, what Apple does as a company, and what type of information we would be looking for to include in their report. Now, of course, if you've probably seen other videos that I've done here in the Power of the BI, and there are definitely probably tens of other types of visualizations that could be used for a company such as Apple, including the financial information, being the financial statements, the balance sheet, the income statements, and so on. But we're not going to be analyzing that data. But if you're interested in analyzing that type of data, or understanding that type of data as it's being visualized visualizations are created in the Power BI report, I do have other videos out there that you can go out and check out. And who's to say I may even create or go back and do some similar videos as it relates to a company such as Apple. But when it comes to the financial statements, they're pretty much one and the same. You know, it just depends on who the company is and what they're actually reporting. But in this particular case here, we're talking about a company like Apple. And again, this Power BI report is not an actual report created for Apple. It's just being used for teaching purposes. So as I go through this report, the first thing I want you to understand is some of the visualizations that are used. Everything on here is a visualization. In the very beginning of creating a Power BI report, it's just a blank document. It's a blank report, just like it would be a blank document if you were creating a Word document. It'd be a blank document until you start putting words on it, and then depending on what type of words you put on it, it could be it could be a research paper, it could be a legal document, it could be whatever you need it to be. In this particular case, we are looking at some information that we may find useful when it comes to a client such as Apple. So, as we can see, the first visualization that's here that stands out that says, hey, this is the Apple report. It's the Apple logo. It's the Apple logo. I'm not trying to sell this report. I will not sell you this report. If I do give you this report, I'll take this Apple logo off. But of course, the one thing that stands out for any company is its logo. So we put the Apple logo on here. Now, as you know, in most cases, Apple is very simple. You know, the Apple logo, for the most part, most of the time you see it's going to be white or it's going to be black. And, you know, there are even some Apple logos out there that have colors on them that may represent the diversity at Apple. But in this particular case, we just used the black logo. We could have used the white logo. The reason why I initially did use the white logo here, but the reason why I took the white logo off is because the white logo did not, the color of the white and the actual color of the report that we created here, the logo, it didn't stand out. It was kind of off a little bit. So I wanted to use the black logo. That's why I kind of used the black trim around the borders for the title and some of the other visualizations. But at the end of the day, I believe that a logo is very important. So if you're creating a Power BI report for a client, I do believe that a logo is very important. If you're taking my online course, Power of the BI, as you can find, powerofbi.com, you will see that I do request on our final projects to have logos included. It doesn't matter what the logo is at that point, but I do request that you have logos included. Now, if we slide over to the right, another visualization that we have, it would just be a text box logo. I mean, it would just be a text box. And in this case, we have Apple Inc. revenue. Now, with that said, I don't always put a title on the reports that I create. And the reason why I don't create a title is because, one, the logo stands out for itself, and this is not necessarily a website unless we're creating a Power BI embedded report. That's a different conversation. That's a different story. But in this particular case, this is not a Power BI embedded report. And I think you know, for the sake of teaching, for the sake of you understanding, you know, what's available to you, it's okay here to place the text box and to create the title of this report being Apple Inc. revenue. And given that it says Apple Inc. revenue, we would believe that all of the visualizations on this page, on this report, would be and somehow have some type of relationship with revenue. But the most important thing when it comes to actually teaching, from a teaching standpoint, is you can place a text box on a Power BI report and create a title. Some of you guys already know that because you've already created in class, and some of you probably have seen the text box on reports. If you haven't created in class, then there are those of you out there that is the first time you seeing a Power BI report and you're like, oh, it's kind of like a Word document. And the answer to that is absolutely yes, because again, Power BI is a Microsoft product. I probably should also say that I am not an employee of Microsoft. I am not a contractor of Microsoft. I have worked as a contractor for Microsoft before. I've never worked as a direct employee for Microsoft. But at this point, I am not an employee or a contractor for Microsoft, and I don't get paid by Microsoft to build out Power BI reports or to do this, to host my class, which is called Power of the BI, again, that you can find at powerofthebi.com, shameless plug, and presenting Power BI projects, Power BI reports here at Power of the BI. It's just a matter of there are several different data visualization tools, and I am a fan of Power BI. I am a fan of Power BI. So that's why I've chosen Power BI to be my tool that I teach for data visualization. Now, let's see here. Another report, or not another report, but another visualization that's on this page is the drop down. And basically it's a slicer. And with this slicer, we're dropping down the year. So we're slicing by year. And the years that we're looking at in this report will be the years 2002, 2022, 2023, 2024. I need my glasses on. I actually created the report and didn't even remember, what year it was. That's kind of crazy. But anyway, so let's see. One data visualization that we're using is the slicer. And with the slicer, we are slicing by year. And when we slice by year, we can just select a different year and we can see how revenue is affected and affected by different years. And we can hold down the control and we can select multiple years, hold down the control, and now we can see all three. And we can come back and we can erase it. And we still see all three because that is our default visual. The next slice we have, the next visualization we have again is another slicer. So rather than slicing by year, we can slice by quarter. Now, of course, it makes the most sense if you select the year and then you select the quarter. So then we've got 4 quarters in a year, 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters, 1, 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. We can select the quarter and we can see how revenue is affected per quarter. Oh man, these allergies are killing me. Then the next slicer we have again is, the next visualization that we have again is the month, is again a slicer, but we're slicing by month. So of course we have January through December for slicing by month. And of course it makes the most sense if we have a month selected and not just all, because we could say February and it'll show us February. Well, if we select February and we don't select a year or a quarter, it's going to show us how the month of February compares in each one of the years. But let's select a particular year because that makes the most sense. So we select the year, we select 2024, and then we select the quarter. And within that quarter, in the first quarter, there's only January, February, and March. In the second quarter, let's see. It didn't erase for me. Oh, because I have February already selected. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to select 2024. I'm going to select quarter 2, and then I will only be able to see the months available for quarters 2 and quarter 2, which are April, May, and June. I'm going to select May because that's my birthday month. Anybody want to send me a gift, you're more than welcome to. I'll definitely take it and I'll give you a shout out here online as well. Then I'm going to come back. I'll go to quarter 3 and I'm going to select quarter 3. And in quarter 3, The months in quarter three are July, August, and September. So we can only select one month. Well, we can only select months that are in quarter three. We can select 1 month, or we can select multiple months with the hold down. And if I come back and select quarter four, the only months that'll be available in quarter four will be the months in quarter four, but I had September selected, so now I've got to deselect September. Now I'm going to select quarter four. I'm going to come back, and now I see that the months that are available in quarter four are October, November, and December. Okay. I'm going to select December because that's the month of Christmas, and that shows us how revenue is affected in the month of December in quarter four. So all of those slicers, all of those visualizations are slicer visuals, and those slicer visuals can be found here in the visualizations. And then there's actually a new slicer that is used. I don't very often use the new slicer. I may look at that in the next report, but a slicer is a slicer. This just gives you an idea what it does. It allows you to select by certain entities. And then the next visualization is the actual revenue visualization. And in this visualization, it's a card visualization, and it allows us to see the revenue in this card. And then there's a profit visualization, which again is another card, and we can see profit. Then we can see another card which shows us the number of regions that are serviced by this Apple Power BI report, and the number of products that Apple sells, the number of products that Apple sells per this card. So we've got a slicer for year, a slicer for quarter, a slicer for month. Then we have a card for revenue, a card for profit, a card for region, and a card for products. Now, as I said, we have 7 regions, and those regions are identified by Africa, Asia, Australia, Central America, Europe, North America, and South America. Again, this is not an actual visualization or an actual report created for the true Apple Inc. Corporation. So their regions that they are servicing may or may not be these same regions. We can kind of compare it when we go to the annual report, when we start analyzing the annual report. But in this particular case, these are the regions that we're saying that they're servicing, and actually these are pretty much just the continents of the world. So of course we're saying that Apple services every continent in the world. Now, the products that Apple sell, we're saying iPod, iPhone, the Mac, other products, and wearables. This may or may not be actual products or actual products that Apple actually serves. Could be, maybe not, some of them probably. But at the end of the day, again, we are just using this for a teaching moment in order to be able to identify products and regions for Apple. So what we can do is we can select Africa, and then this shows us how Africa revenue compared in 2022, 2023, and 2024. We can actually go back up to the slicer and we can select 1 year. So now we're only seeing that 1 year that it is servicing. And if we want to select a product, we can say iPad, and this is the revenue by the product, which is iPad, for the region, which is Africa. And we can select Australia, we can select Europe, and we can see that the visualizations change, the cards change, everything changes based on what year, what region, what product we are selecting from. So I am going to erase everything, and here with this region, again, this is just as we have here as a slicer. This is a slicer as well, but it shows us a list as opposed to having a drop down. So this is another way that we can show a slicer in a Power BI report. And over under product, we have the same thing. We have another slicer, but instead of having it being a drop down, we have a list of products. And again, it's the iPhone, the iPod, the iPad, the iPhone, the Mac, other products, and wearables. And again, everything that we select is having something to do in relation with the revenue. Now we have here, and for some reason, yeah, there we go. We have here, we have what we call a stacked area chart, which we're showing the revenue as an area shaded in under each one of the points. So we have January through December as for the month where we're calculating revenue on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis we have the actual revenue count, and we have shaded in under the revenue under the line chart. So this could have just been a line chart, but we chose to use the shaded area just to give it a little bit more graphic effect. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is the actual color, the actual background of the Power BI report. Typically, the Power BI reports, the default is going to be white. What we chose to do here on this particular Power BI report is to give it that monochromatic feel, because that's the kind of feel you get with Apple, that's stainless steel, that silver, that white logo, not a whole lot of colors to it. So that's kind of why we chose this color effect here on this particular Power BI report, because we wanted to kind of give it that monochromatic feel. We could have went with the solid black with the white, but that, to me, I think that all black with the white, it kind of been like an eerie type feel, you know what I mean? Kind of like a funeralistic type joint. I don't even know if funeralistic is a word or not, but at the end of the day, kind of want to give it the same monochromatic feel, but not necessarily give it the all white or the all black type look. So this is what we went with. That's why we chose the colors. So the next visualization that we used here is the clustered column chart. The clustered column chart, and again, it's showing now the clustered column chart is showing us revenue by year. And we have a pie chart where it's showing us revenue by quarter. So, of course, if we choose a particular year, we see that column chart is only going to show us that particular year. Now, if we choose a particular quarter 3, now we see that this pie chart is only going to show us the quarter, right? So, in most cases, when you have visualizations on a Power BI report, you only want to show that visualization one time on the report. So it could be a little bit of overkill to say, hey, we're going to choose quarter 3, and in quarter 3, we're going to choose a pie chart. For quarters, we're going to show pie chart, and for years, we're going to show revenue, because we very well could have just selected to choose a clustered column chart or the pie chart, here, and not have the drop downs, and then we could actually click on the column chart, and it shows us what year we're looking at, and it fades out the other 2 years that we're not using. Then we can come over to the quarter and we can select the quarter. So with that said, we could get the same effect that we have with the drop down slicers, but the drop down slices allows us to show you what you can do with the Power BI report. Now, in some cases, somebody may say, hey, I don't want to click on the individual visualizations, being the column chart and the pie chart. I want to do the drop downs, because we're used to clicking in the boxes for drop downs and for our list. Now, as you can see here, it gets kind of, I didn't really calculate this information out. What I could do is I could make these blank. When we don't have the actual information, we can make it say 0, but that's for a whole nother day. We're not going to worry about that right now. Let's see. So at the end of the day, those are the visualizations that we've chosen. We've chosen the visualizations that are on this particular report are going to be the Apple logo, which is an image. And the image is a visualization. The text box is a visualization. Then we have a slicer for the year, a slicer for the quarter, and a slicer for the month, all with drop downs. Then we have a slicer for the region, a slicer for the product, but they are shown as list. So all of these 5 are the same type of visualization. 3 are drop downs and 2 are list. Then we have cards. Pretty much a card just shows you, what we're talking about. In this particular case, we're saying revenue is 5 billion, profit is 2 billion, regions is 7 regions that's included in this revenue and profit, and there's 5 products that's being calculated. These card visuals are just telling us exactly what we're looking for. And then let's see here, there we go. Then we have our shaded, what's that area? They're calling it shaded area. I think it's called a shaded area. No, stacked. It's a stacked area. They're calling it a stacked area chart, and it's shaded under. So that's enough for the Power BI report for right now. We'll get back to that. As you know, that was the finished version of what we would consider to be the report that we're going to deliver to the customer. But what we're going to do is we're going to move over to the investor documents, the annual report, more so probably the quarterly report for Apple. Again, this report is actually a document that is for public, I'm say consumption, if that's how to use that word right now. I'm trying to use my 10-cent words. But you are able to grab this report going over to the Apple site, go to Investor Relations or Investor or something like that, and you will be able to. This is a public document, is what I'm saying. It's not something that I've altered. It's not anything that I put any numbers on. Again, I want to definitely clarify that the end report, the Power BI report, is not going to be actual data coming from Apple, coming from the Apple database, whatever database Apple is using for their information. This is simply for you as a potential consultant, as a potential contractor, as a potential worker, employee for Apple. If you were in the data analyst department, if you was a Power BI developer or a data analyst / data engineer, either for Apple or on an Apple project, or for a customer that is similar to Apple, that has a business similar to Apple. So I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page there. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through this report. I'm not going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but it's just to give you some idea of, you may be on a project. Let's just say that you were working with a consulting company and the client that you were given was Apple or similar client to Apple. And, your first question is, what do you want to see in a Power BI report? And to be honest, in most cases, the client really doesn't know what they want to see in the Power BI report. Sometimes they will say, hey, from a general standpoint, we'd like to see this, this, and this, and we'd like to see Z, Y, and A. But for the most part, you're the professional, you're the Power BI developer, you're the data analyst, you're the data engineer. It's up to you to deliver a high quality product, but you need to know what that company does and what type of information they're looking for. So that's what we're going to be doing when we go through this particular report. And in some cases, probably even most cases, you may not have to go through their investor report, but this is just so that you can get an idea of what that looks like. But, you are probably going to be given access to the database, and you're going to have probably 10, 15, 20, 100, maybe 200, 300 tables in the database. Then you're going to need to be able to create reports, create Power BI reports based off of that database. And you may say, hey, what are you really looking for? It's a lot of tables out here. What do you want me to pull? So what I'm saying is, for a starter, if you don't have anything else, you can go to their annual report. So, in essence, what I'm saying is, if you don't have any other documentation to go off of, and you don't have any clue of what type of report to create, you can go to the investor relations report, you can go to the annual report, you can go to the quarterly report, and you can get some idea of what the company, who the company is, what the company does, and what type of information they're looking for. So, as we review here, and as you can see, again, we just went to apple.com, we went over to the investor relations, and now we're just looking at the actual, investor document, just trying to get an idea of what these guys do. Financial data, we're probably not going to be needing financial data because, again, we're not looking to create balance sheets, income statements, or anything like that. We're just trying to get some idea of what's going on here, what's going on, right? So, I go back, I'm like, okay, so I got an option. I got an annual reports, Form 10K, 2024, 2023, 2022, 2021. So I know at least they're probably looking at 4 years of data, that they're interested in 4 years of data. Again, when we build out the Power BI report, we're not going to be using this exact data, but just understand that, hey, we know that they're looking for years, within year time frames. So we're going to be basing some of our data off of year time frames. So we scrolled through, we went to the 10K for 2024, and now we're just trying to see, what is really in here. For those of you guys that are familiar with 10K reports, you know what's in here, but for those of you guys that are engineers or you're brand new to Power BI, you're brand new to this industry, you're just looking at the data trying to see, okay, what do these guys do, right? And what's important to these guys. And what we have to understand here is that this information we're looking at is investor information. If you were an investor, this is the information that you would be interested in knowing about the company. So we're just scrolling through, we're just trying to get an idea of, what's important to the investors. So basically we're trying to find something that's going to stand out, that's going to stick out. What we do know already is what has stuck out is the years, 2024, 2023, 2022, 2021, the years that we are going to be taking a look at. And of course, with the investor report, there's a lot that goes on in here. Human capital, what is that? Human resources. For those of you guys that haven't had a chance yet, I have a Power BI video out there talking about human resources and how to use Power BI in human resources. Risk factors here, available information, microeconomic and industry risk. Now now we're getting into something, are we going to be dealing with any type of risk in a report? What do we want our initial report to be based on? When you're talking about a Power BI report, it could be insurance, it could be risk, it could be financial data. But what we're trying to find out here, what we're looking for is what really is most important to this customer right now, to where I can at least begin to create a report that's going to be able to give me some wow factor initially. Now, I'll be honest, that first report is not going to be that you deliver the first report. That first report that you deliver is not going to be the end all be all to reports. It's just to get you started. It's just to say, hey, this is where we are. This is what we do. You're putting that report out there, but you want to put your best foot forward so that you can at least give the customer a certain confidence level as to who you are and your capabilities when it comes to creating a Power BI report. Sorry, got all kind of stuff going on here today. Let me just pause that message. Oh, Epic Games. So here we go. That could be gaming, could be something that we want to put into our Power BI report. Now we're getting into the financial data, right? Now we're getting into the financial data. Again, we're not going to be really building out financial statements and income statements and balance sheets and pro formas and things like that. But we know that for every business, especially for businesses that are on either the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange and different that are publicly traded companies, we know that the financial data is some of the most important data when it comes to an investor. But we're not building out this report right now as a report to be viewed by investors. This is going to be internal information. So we see here Apple S&P 500 index. If you invested $100 in 2019, well, it looks like the value of it was in 2019 was $100, and in September 2024 was $430. That's just me just reading what I'm thinking. S&P 500, $100 in 113 and 220, and September 2024, 210. I'm not 100% sure exactly what that, let's see, 330. Again, this is investor data when it comes to the stock information. You know, is this something that they want? 2018 to 2024, $100 in 2019, $146 in 2020. When we start looking at this information here, you know, we may want to ask questions. You know, is this data that we're looking for? Is this information that they're interested in? And if so, what's all entailed in this information? Oh, now this is some good information here. Now we see that some of the products, it's a product, service, software announcements. Now this is information that I think is super important when it comes to building out that initial report. We're seeing a MacBook Pro being a product. MacBook Pro 14, 16, and an iMac. Were all products for the first quarter. For the second quarter was the MacBook Air 13-inch. The MacBook Air 15-inch in the second quarter. In the third quarter, there was the iPad Air, the iPad Pro, the iOS, the Mac OS, the iPad OS, the Watch OS. Now, this is good information. This right here is good information because now we see how this business, what products what products this business has. I'm sure it has some services as well because I know Apple, so I do know Apple has a service in. But if I didn't know Apple, I know that this is a level of products that they are producing. iPhone in the fourth quarter was the iPhone 16, the iPhone 16 Plus, the iPhone 16 Pro, the Apple Watch, the AirPods 4. So for those of you guys that don't know, now you can see that when they release these products, they release them within certain time periods, whether it be first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. I think this is good information here. Let's see, segments. And as we saw that we're going to be looking at it in segments before, we call them regions. They got the Americas, Europe, Greater China, Japan, and the rest of Asia Pacific. So I think we had regions, and as I would say, as what this is called in segments, but region from what I'm seeing here is region and segment can be used interchangeably. We had regions in our report which identified the 7 continents, but here it's got Americas, so it could be North America, South America, Central America, all considered to be in the Americas. So this is good information. Now we're seeing the sales of these products, the iPhone, the Mac, and the iPad, and in the years 2024, 2023, 2022. So as we saw at the initial part of the initial part of this document, this report, we said that it was broken out in years, and now we see that even the sales of these products are actually broken out in years, 2024, 2023, 2022. So now we can see the iPhone, the Mac, and the iPad, and I'm sure that the other products that we saw earlier, that they would be broken out in years as well. So then we would want to see, you know, what years would, you know, what months, what quarters, what year were these products sold? What did they call them? Segments. What segment? Was it in the Americas? Was it in China? Was it in the rest of Asia? I mean, now we're getting to the point to where we can see where a lot of this information, where we can see the information that we have used in the initial Power BI, in the Power BI report that we created. Now we can see how that report relates back to this report. And again, this report, the Power BI report that we created is not official documentation, official data, official financial data from Apple. But what we want to be able to identify is, you know, how can we build a Power BI report for a company such as Apple and give them relative information that they would be looking for. So let's see here. We scroll through and we see gross margins for products and services, gross margin percentages for products and services. And again, we really haven't gotten into the types of services that Apple provides, but we know, I mean, if you are a Apple consumer, you know what services Apple has. And if you are a Samsung consumer, you know what services Samsung has. And they're pretty much, super similar. Research and development, and we know that it only makes sense that a tech company such as Apple would spend a significant amount of time, effort, and money, resources into researching into research and development, because they always want to stay on top of the game as far as what they're producing. So now we're really getting into this thing by using data, financial data, without having to use financial data. And when I say that, I mean by not having to create financial reports such as income statements and balance sheets, but really seeing, what those numbers equate to when they get down to the real nitty gritty of building out a Power BI report. So again, this is why we research using the annual report. Again, we're able to use the annual report for Apple because it is a publicly traded company. But if it was not a publicly traded company, we may not be able to use, we wouldn't be able to find, we may not be able to find investor information unless we were given the investor information. But in this particular case, we can go straight to the website. We can get the information that we need from the annual report and get some idea of how we want to deliver this Power BI report. Now, as you can see, here is that financial data that, is good. It's good information, but it's not necessarily what we're going to be using. I mean, I'll be honest, building out an income statement, financial statements, and tying all that together using Power BI is possible. You can go over to one of my videos that I have on building out financial data, financial statements, but that's not what we're going to be doing here. This is really once you get to the point to where you're able to build out Power BI reports and tie data and really build models, this is more of a complex piece. This is really more of a complex piece when it comes to doing this. But being able to build out financial statements using Power BI, it really does reduce the amount of time, reduce the amount of closing time. What I mean by closing is in the financial world, there are month-end close, quarter-end close, year-end close, and normally a close would probably take a week, maybe 10 days. And I'm not a financial guy. It's just something that I talked to some financial people, and I kind of believe that that's how it works. But it normally takes about 7 to 10 days to do a month-end close, a quarter-end close, and a year-end close may even take 2 or 3 weeks. But putting this into building those reports into Power BI could significantly reduce the amount of time of those close and significantly reduce the amount of manpower that's being used, the human capital that's being used to close that month, that quarter, or that year. But again, we're not going to go too deep into that because we are not going to be building out a financial statement or financial document within this video, this lesson. We are simply using this annual report to give us some idea of how to research. Now the question is, Tarad, what if the customer is not a public company and I do not have, what if the company is not a public company? How do I research at that point? They may give you a BDR, a business document report. I think that's what it's called, the BDR. And you will be able to build a report based off of some of the research that you'll see there. That's not going to give you a whole lot of information, but that is a maybe or a kind of. Another way that you may be able to, another way that you can do your research is schedule meetings. You know, you would schedule meetings with the point of contacts within the different areas that you will probably be building the report for, and they will you will ask the key questions as to what are they looking for, what type of visualizations are you looking for, really what do you do in the company, what do you like to see in this report, right? And you know, you can schedule those different meetings. You know, it could be a 30-minute meeting or a 1 hour meeting, 45-minute meeting, however much time you need, but you could schedule individual meetings with individual points of contact to get an idea of what they're looking for. And after you talk to probably 1, 2, 3 of those, so let me back up. Talking to 3 individuals is probably gonna be the most points of contact that you're gonna really need to speak with in order to build a report, because it's really gonna be primarily one person that's, you know, really very seriously interested in the Power BI report, and the other 2 are gonna be bought in. Right, but the other 2 can give you more information about the company. But you do want to get to that key decision maker and say, hey, you know, what do you want to see in this report, right? And you want to take good notes, and you want to make sure that, you know, you read back to them what you think you heard they said, so that you will be able to justify why you built in certain visualizations in your Power BI report. Then when you talk to the other 2 supplemental players, you know, you're going to probably hear some of the same things that the first person said or the main decision maker said, and they may throw out a couple of other caveats, and you're like, oh, didn't know that. And then, you know, you're able to add that as well. And then when you're able to add that additional information, that main point of contact is probably going to be very excited to know that you really did your due diligence and your research in order to go out there and really build out the best report that you could probably build. So that's one other way to research. And to be honest, I think that's probably the most effective way. Okay, so let's get on to the good part. Let's get on to the good part. On over to the good part. Old school. I don't remember the rap, to be honest. Let's get on to the good part. I can't remember what the rap was. Anyway, so here's the deal. Let's go and get on over to the good part here. And what we're here for is to talk about the Power BI report itself. So again, what I do want to emphasize is this report is simply a replication of a project that could have some of the similar elements that we would see in the Apple in an Apple report, based on the information that we saw in the annual report, the 10K. I think it was at the 2024 10K report. So with that said, let's move on over to the over to the project, to the Power BI report, and let's talk about what we see here in the Power BI report. So what we're looking at here, we're looking at the model view of the Power BI report, and basically we're looking at the data. We're looking at the actual data that's inside the report. The data that we're looking here in this particular table, the date, revenue, expenses, product, region, as we saw over in the Apple annual report, where we saw region was what we would call the segment. And as we come over, what we're going to do now is we're just going to start building out different visualizations. Just getting started. I mean, of course, when we're building out a Power BI report, you know, we typically don't have the exact visualizations that we are going to have at the end. So we start building out the report. The way I normally build a report out is using a table. So what I would do is pretty much replicating almost the data view that we just finished looking at, and building out a table similar to that view, to that data view. And as you see here, the data that we are inputting into this particular table is the year, the quarter, the month, the day, And basically, when we bring in the date field, it's automatically giving us a hierarchy of year, quarter, month, and day. Then we're bringing in the region. Of course, we say, as we saw in the annual report, that the region is pretty much what Apple has as segments. The product field, we saw that the products that Apple, I believe, was using was iPad, Mac, Mac 14-inch, Mac 15-inch, different size iPads. We're not going to get too deep into the different types of products that that Apple uses, because again, this is only it's only a sample. It's only just a replication of what we believe a Power BI report would look like for a company such as Apple. Again, this is not actual Apple information, Apple data. Then we're bringing in the revenue, which is in US dollars. That's important because, of course, as we saw with the segmentation, it was the segmentation was broken up by Americas. I believe in the Apple report, in the Apple annual report, it was Americas, Asia, China, rest of Asia, and a couple other areas. Here in our report, we've got it broken up into 7 different regions. So here's the deal. I know that you may be a little hesitant in taking a tech course online, whether it's Power of the BI or any other tech course, because you may feel as if you just can't learn everything you need to know in order to be successful on your job. So here's the deal. I have written a book. It's called The 6-Figure Cheat Code, How to Make Money in Tech. Go over to Amazon, pick it up, and you'll learn the key secrets as to how to become successful in this new tech career, this new tech journey that you're about to embark upon. Now, back to the video. So as we can see here, the logo is what we've brought in, and it is the white logo with the silver background. Now, let's see here what we've got going. We've brought in the image for the logo. We've brought in the slicer for the region. We've brought in the slicer for the product. We're going to unselect Asia because we were only able to see what's going on in Asia. But now, since everything is unselected, we're seeing the total revenue, we're seeing the total number of regions, and we're seeing the total count of the products being $55 billion in revenue, 7 total regions, and 5 total products. So we're bringing in one other visual here, and it looks like we are going to be bringing in the clustered column chart, and we're going to be using the revenue. So as we can tell now, the revenue is what we are going to be basing the project or basing the Power BI report off of. Overall, even though we are seeing other visualizations, the revenue is what we are going to be able to, I guess, call the Power BI product, the Power BI report, because everything that not everything, but the majority, what we're going to be using is going to be based off of revenue. So here we're seeing Australia has a total revenue of 8 billion based off of the card, 55 total billion for the entire project. Africa has 8 billion. Now again, what I do want to highly emphasize is that we are not going to be using actual Apple data. This is data that we have created in order to build out this report that's giving us very similar information to what a company such as Apple or Samsung would be using to create, to use to visualize data in a Power BI report. Now, the next visualization we're bringing in currently is the clustered bar chart, Now, the difference, again, for those that don't know, the difference between a clustered bar chart and a clustered column chart is a column of course, holds things up, and the bar is like a bar you can set things on, so it's going to go horizontal. The bar chart is going to go horizontal, and the column chart is going to go vertical. Just testing it out here now, we can see what the different values are for Africa, Australia, North America, South America, and you can see that the values are somewhat similar, again, with 8 billion being for the revenue for on average for each one of the regions. But again, this is only just simulated data, just data that we made up. It's not data that's coming actually from Apple data. We were using the actual Apple data set. We will be able to see the changes a little bit more drastic than what we are seeing when it comes to the changes as is with our current data set. But this current data set allows us to build out a Power BI report that would be similar to an Apple Power BI report. And here we are looking at potentially another clustered column chart. I don't really like to use the same visualization multiple times in a report, but sometimes we'll do it just to see what those different changes look like, and then we'll come back in at a later date or a later time, and then we'll make some changes. In this particular case here, initially we used the clustered column chart to find the year. In this case, we're not going to use the same data. We're going to use a similar visualization, being the clustered column chart. But what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the months as opposed to the year. So now we can see we've got revenue by year, we've got revenue by quarter using the bar chart, and then we come back and we use the clustered column chart again, and now we're getting revenue by month. So that's kind of the difference in the visualization, is that rather than looking at the visualization by year, we're looking at this visualization by month. Now, there are other ways that we could be able to do this. We could drill down into this report if we were using the hierarchy. If we were using the hierarchy, we could drill down, and then what we would be able to do is go back and see drill down from year to quarter to month, even to day and hour or minute, if we had that, even seconds, if we had that amount, that type of data. But in this particular case, just using the standard date hierarchy, we are able to see year, quarter, and month, but we're not even drilling down here. We're just going to be using the visualization for Power BI in order to visualize this data. What I was doing a few seconds ago as I went over to page 2 was just recreating that table that we were using initially, and then removing it from page 1 and then bringing it over to page 2, because I didn't want to lose that table. So what I did is I just created a second page and put that table in the second page, so that if I wanted to bring that table back into page 1, I can. If I want to use it at a later time on page 2 or page 3, I'd be able to do that as well. Typically in a Power BI report, I like to create as much data I try to create the report using a single page, definitely no more than 3 pages in a particular Power BI report. But we'll see how this works. We really haven't gotten to that point yet, but I think what we're going to end up doing is just using for this particular report, we're only going to just be using 1 page. But, needless to say, it's still just an example. Again, it's not actual Apple data. It's not actual business data. It's what we're using as a teaching tool in order to show you how to build a Power BI report for a company. And with this being Fortune 5 Friday, the company we're choosing is a Fortune 500 company, and the Fortune 500 company that we're choosing today is the company of Apple Inc. Now we're to the point where what we're trying to do now is develop spacing, creating the real estate for the different visualizations within the report, seeing what gives us the best visual effect, the best visual appeal. As we build out these different visualizations. What I'm doing here, as you see, was said before, for the cluster column chart, the cluster column chart we used initially was by year, and then we have a cluster column chart by month. And what I don't want to do is place those two visualizations next to each other. So what I'm trying to do is avoid having those two visualizations next to each other, so that if we place them side by side, it will, like, the years and the months are going to be running together. And if we place them on top of one another, it would make it seem as if it is stretching out further than what it should be. So just trying to get a good feel for the visualization. And this goes back to the point of what we talked about earlier in regards to the graphic design effect. You kind of fit into the graphic designer piece when you are trying to build out the spatial arrangements for the different visualizations on a Power BI report. And it gets kind of tricky. Even though you may have all the data that you need and that you want to present, you still want to give some appeal to those that are actually visualizing the data. So, it's kind of tricky. It's a little tricky trying to build out the right data that is needed, would create the right data that's needed, the right data visualizations is needed, and then placing it into the right form of the design to give it the right design effect. It's a little bit tricky there, but that's okay. That's kind of like a difference between a Power BI developer and a data engineer. The data engineer just, as long as the right data, as long as you have the data and it's the correct data, it's not incorrect data, it's good data, that's what a data engineer is supposed to provide. But a Power BI developer, you've got to be able to provide that visual effect in addition to the right data. So, that's just how I feel. That's just how I feel. Now we are going to looks like we're bringing in another slicer, and the slicer we're bringing in here is going to be date. I don't like to use a slider a whole lot. Slider for dates is good, but typically I like to use a drop down when it comes to date. So here we're going to be using the drop down, and then we're going to come back over. We're going to select the date hierarchy, and when we select the date hierarchy, now we're going to determine how do we want to see the drop down, and we're going to be selecting the drop down by year. And of course, we have a blank there. We've got a blank, and then we've got the years. So what we need to do is we need to make sure we get that blank out of the drop down. So what we're doing here is we're creating a filter, and in the filter it's going to allow us to remove that blank. So we're going to select all, remove the blank, and now all we're going to find is going to be the year. So now we have 2022, 2022, 2023, and 2024, which is kind of funny, almost ironic that when we were looking at the actual Apple data, I think had the annual report for 2024, 23, 22, and 21. So we are almost kind of in there with a very similar year with the date structure, the date hierarchy. Now again, emphasizing again that this is not the actual Apple data. This is not the actual Apple years that came from the annual report or the 10K. This is a data set that we created, and everything that's in here is basically just a simulation of what could be if it was a company such as Apple or Samsung or Google, or a company that's producing products, producing digital products, handheld products, mobile products in different regions. So here we are going to we're just trying to make sure we've got the formatting down for our slicer filter, for our date hierarchy. We're looking at the visualizations that we've already created, which we have the logo, the Apple logo, the revenue, the number of regions that we're including, the number of products that we're including, the clustered bar chart. And again, the bar is because it's going sideways or horizontal, and the clustered column chart, which is a clustered column, is going to be going vertical as opposed to horizontal. If we were to click the bar chart and then go back over and select the column chart, we would have the same data. It would just turn into a column chart as opposed to a bar chart. Same would be for the bar chart. If we selected the bar chart and then we clicked on column chart under the column visualization, it would change to a column chart. However, the data would still be the same, but it would just rotate from what's on the x-axis to what is on the y-axis. And again, creating the spatial layout is very important when it comes to Power BI. Again, because even though you have good data, even though you have the correct data, even though the data is where it's supposed to be, or being able to be matched, you want your visualizations to be as appealing to the eye as possible, so that that person that is looking at it does not necessarily see the difference between what you have and what would normally be maybe even a website. Even though in this particular Power BI report is not going to come out as an embedded Power BI report in a website, but for those that see it, they will be able to see the report from what we call Power BI service or PowerBI.com, which does present it as a website, web type look. And we want to make sure that the visualizations, the design itself is as close as possible to what would be a web effect. So here we're just making changes to the height and to the width, to the height of the visualizations. And what we really want to do is those visualizations that are similar, such as the clustered bar chart and the clustered column chart, given that they're on the same, I would say, horizontal axis, we would want, well, what I'm trying to do is see that these visualizations are as close to height and width, the same height and width as possible. Sometimes you can make it happen. Sometimes it's a little tricky depending on the amount of data in either the bar chart or the column chart and how we're trying to, in the height that we're trying to get it to. So what I'm doing here is I am aligning both of these visualizations, and I am going to attempt to see that they are distributed horizontally as much as possible, and try to see that their heights and their widths are as close to one another as possible. So selecting the bar chart again, making it just a little bit smaller, and we are now going to see, just looking at it here, it looks as if the bar chart is a little narrower. Is narrower a word? Yeah, a little narrower than the column chart. But of course, the column chart is going to be a little bit wider because it has more values in the column. So what we are attempting to do now is clean the report up just a little bit so that we can create some real estate here on the report to give the visualizations a more desired effect, a more desired visual appeal as we round out, not say round out, but as we get the report to actually looking like a report. So what we're doing here is now we are about to start spacing and getting that that graphic effect, that graphic design effect that we need in order to have a desirable report from visualization standpoint. So as you see here, we're dealing with this. We're creating the slicer. We already have the year slicer, and now we're copying the year slicer. We're going to use that same slicer, but rather than using the year, now we're going to bring the date hierarchy back in. Then we're going to come in. We're going to take out the day, the month, and the year, so that we only have the quarter that's in this particular slicer. As you see there, that quarter slicer has a blank field in it. So it was the quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then there was a blank. So we're going to select all in our filter. We're going to take the blank out. Now we can see that we only have the quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4. We also have a blank field in our year. So we're going to come back over to our year, and we're going to filter, and we're going to select all, remove the blank, and now we only have the years 20, 22, 23, and 24. Selecting the regions and selecting the product, checking to see if there are any blanks in the regions and in the product. There are no blanks in the regions and the products. So now we know that those slicers are good. Here we're just testing to see if when we select the year and we select the quarter, we can see here now that all of the visualizations are interacting with one another. When we select different years, we select different quarters, the pie chart, the column chart, and the shaded area all are interacting with one another. So now, again, as I said before, the goal of this mission right now is to get some spacing going so that we can really start to see what this report would look like if we, start working with the the visual effects. So not necessarily the visual effects, but the graphic design, making sure that we've got the correct spatial layout, or that we have good spatial layout. So now what we're doing, we're just setting up our slicers and our cards so that, again, we're just trying to get good visualization, trying to really build out the report for good visualizations at this point. So as we see, do we want the product first? Do we want the region first? So we're going to bring the product over, and we're going to reduce that size a little bit of the product. It's going to be kind of tricky here, given we've got the cards and we have the column. Well, we got the cards and the other visualizations. So, this is just a part of building out a good Power BI report. Yeah, you've got to have the data. You've got to have good data. But in addition to having good data, the end customer, the client, whoever the end customer is, whoever is looking at the report, they want to see the report. They want to see it. They want to see it as professional as possible. So that's our job as Power BI developers, is to not only understand the data, not only analyze the data, but to build out the Power BI reports to have the desired visual appeal as best that we know how. So now what I am doing is I'm looking at the actual page rather than looking at the individual visualizations. I'm actually looking at the page, and what I want to do is I want to make the page just a little bit longer, so that we can have a little bit more room for our visuals. So I just made the page just a little bit taller. So I increased the height just a little bit. Now I can bring this column chart down. I can bring this pie chart down, and it's giving us just a little bit more room. So now we can spread out the pie chart. We can make it height taller, we can make it wider, we can do the same thing for the column chart, and just get a little bit more space. So that's another part of the visualization, that not only are we controlling the visualizations of the individual visuals, but we're also controlling the visualization of the entire page. So if we need more space, we can increase the space. If we need to have more visuals on a page, we can have more visuals on the page, and we can increase the page width, the page height. At the end of the day, you really don't want to have a real tall Power BI report, for the simple fact you don't want to have to do a whole lot of scrolling. You want to be able to look at the report in one bird's eye view and see, bam, there's the report. You don't want it to be too wide because you don't want to do a whole lot of scrolling to the left or to the right. Now, to be honest, when you're increasing, or when I increase the page size, the one thing I don't want to do is to have my visuals to where I have to scroll to the left or to the right. I prefer to scroll up and down as opposed to scrolling left or right. And in my class, what I also teach is, I teach that concept of scrolling up and down and not scrolling left and right, because it kind of gets kind of wonky when you're trying to read either a page or read the text, and you've got to scroll to see the whole page. But it's more acceptable if you're able to scroll if you're scrolling up and down or scrolling vertically. So I just went back over, looking back at the page size. Now I see that I've got a pretty good amount of space at the bottom of the page. So I don't really need all of that space. So I kind of want to remove some of that space at the bottom of the page, because you don't want to have too much. You don't want to have too much extra space. It's kind of like having a room with having a room in your house and not having a whole lot of furniture. You kind of want to have enough space to where it's not too cluttered and not too cluttered, not too crowded, but at the same time, you don't want it to be too empty either. So we just did that. We just took out some of that space at the bottom, reduced that height, reduced that vertical height, so that we won't have so much space down there at the bottom. Now, again, we're moving the cards around. At this point, it's kind of, it's really like trial and error now. What goes where, what looks best where. So now that's what we're doing. We're just playing with, the spatial arrangements of each one of the visualizations to see, what goes where. When we have visuals at the top of the page, we want those visuals to line up to where the title of the visuals are reading across the top. So that's when you see those lines, or those red lines, I'm trying to get those visualizations even across the top, so that like where region is on the same line as product, on the same line as quarter, on the same line as year, on the same line as year, and then having all of that even with the top of the logo. We don't want to have it to where we've got visuals that are up and down. It's not very even, because it's not very visually appealing. So that's kind of what we're doing here. We're just playing with spatial arrangements. We got a lot of space on the width. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and I'm going to format that width a little bit, so that we can remove some of that space, that extra space to the right. Again, because we don't want to have a similar, again, like a room it's a real big room with no furniture, right? And we don't want to have a Power BI report that has a lot of space on the page, but don't have a whole lot of visualization. So rather than just trying to create visuals that you probably really don't need, and just to be making stuff up, we can reduce the width and reduce the height of the page to really get that visual effect that we're looking for. So that's what we're doing here. We're just customizing and reformatting the page, just like we can, as I said before, just like we can format, and we can format the visualizations. We can also format the actual page itself. So again, here we are just going to keep playing with these visuals to see what looks good. Where do I want the product? That's a little too high. That's even. I can tell it's even because that red dotted line is going all the way across. Let's see, do I want to make that taller? No, not really. What do I want to do with this total revenue? I am going to bring it right here. I'm going to bring my count of product up a little bit, because I want my counter product to be on the same line and even with my total revenue. So again, it's all trial and error at this point. What looks good. So let's see. Yeah, that looks good there. Now, what am I going to do with this count of region? Am I going to make it I'm going to place it right under the revenue. We can put it right here for the time being. And as you can see, now we're getting somewhere. We're getting to where the page itself is a little bit more, it's a little bit more aesthetic, more visually pleasing to the eye, aesthetically pleasing. So now, let's see, what do I want to do here? Gross profit. So I've got sum of revenue, I've got count of product, I've got count of region. So I'm going to bring another card in. And let's see, I'm going to copy this card just so it'll be the same height and width, and I don't have to reformat this card. I'm going to paste this new card in, and now I'm going to bring in, let's delete that count of region, and I'm going to bring in gross profit. So now we're kind of getting what we need here. Even though I said before, you know, the report itself is mostly about revenue. It's mostly about revenue, but you know, again, it takes product, it takes region, it takes the total regions and the product and the gross profit to all have to coordinate that total revenue, or to build out that total revenue. So you know, that gross profit is allowing us to giving us another visualization, and it makes it it gives the page a little bit more a better aesthetic, having four cards as opposed to having 3. So now we're getting somewhere. We can see now that the page is kind of the report page is kind of coming. It's really trying to come together. You know, now it's just a matter of placement, making sure that each one of the visualizations are lining up with one another. Again, you know, like I said before, part of this game is graphic design. Part of this game is data engineering. That's the combination of the two creates a pretty good Power BI report. You don't have to be a super graphic designer. You don't have to be a super data engineer, but you do have to marry the two and appear to be a super report builder. Now, I know that sounds kind of funny, but that is what it is. That is what it is. But as we can see now, it's just a matter of sizing the visualizations. You know, do we have the visuals where we want the visuals to be? Now we're getting a better idea. I mean, the pages is really coming together at this point. So let's see the slicers. We want to kind of move them over just a little bit. We're move this one over just a little bit. Move this one over. And the reason why is because we want to make that logo have the same edge as the pie chart and the column chart. Again, at this point, it's about visualization. Now that we have created the actual project, the actual Power BI report, now what we are going to do is we're going to start focusing on actually the actual visualization of the entire report, the presentation of the entire report. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove that white logo that I had and go with the black logo, because it's a little easier to, I guess, make the black logo fit a little better, a little easier. And we'll see as we move through this portion of creating the report. But what I want to do now is we pretty much have built out a simple layout of how we could create the real estate piece of where all the different visualizations would go. So now I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in, I'm going to create a text box or use a text box and actually put in the name of the report, the title of the report. Typically, I think I said before, I don't necessarily and you are not seeing what I am doing. So I am going to come back here, and you were not able to see. So I used the black logo. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make space for the actual title of the report, so that just to give you an idea of adding text as a visualization. As I said before, I don't normally like to use text in the visuals or on, or I don't like to use a title on a report because it takes up real estate. But in this case, I think it's going to be okay, and you'll find in some instances where you create your Power BI reports that you will probably want to create titles as well. You may even be asked to create the titles as well. So this is pretty much is all you'll be doing. Is just like you would in any other Microsoft document. You would be bringing in a text field. And actually, the only thing I'm calling this is Apple revenue, or revenue for Apple Inc. Depending on how much space I have here. But basically, we're just using a text box, and we would, just like with any Microsoft tool or Microsoft document, you're able to italicize the text or bold the text, whatever you want to do. What I want to do is I want to make sure that there is not, like, as we can see here, we can drag down, and going vertically, we would be able to see the entire text. Of course, that's not what we want to have when it comes to an actual title or actual text inside of a text box. So I'm going to move over the slicers a little bit, so I can have a little bit more room for the title being Apple Inc. revenue, so that it doesn't overlap with the slicer for product. Then we're going to come back in, and we're going to try to make the visualization more aesthetically pleasing for the slicers that we're using under the Apple Inc. revenue. So of course we got the two slicers that are called year, and the one slice that we have quarter. And basically, I just want to make sure that it aligned accordingly. Typically you could want to make that line up at the edge of the Apple, or you could center it with the Apple Inc. revenue. We'll see how that works out for us here shortly. Now what we're doing here is we're going into the pie chart, and we're removing the revenue, because we already know that this pie chart is in reference to revenue. So we're going to just remove revenue from each one of the quarter titles and just call it 2022 Q1, 2022 Q1, 2022 Q2, 2022 Q3, and 2022 Q4 for the actual titles. The text, now we're going to go in it. We're going to change the name of the actual pie chart itself and just call it revenue. Do we want to change the sizing of the font? Maybe not. Right now we're going to change it from 14 to an 18. We're doing the same thing. We're going to do the same thing with the clustered column chart as well. Right now it's sum of revenue by quarter. We're going to come down, look at the visual, and what we want to do is, we've got it by quarter. We're going to change the hierarchy, and in the sum of the revenue, the title itself, we're going to change the hierarchy just to show year. Then we're going to come back into the let's see here. We're gonna come back into, we're back into the pie chart. We're just trying to analyze what do we do with the pie chart. We changed the name of the pie chart from revenue and quarter name to where we're seeing revenue by Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Just trying to get an actual title here. So we're gonna call it, or a better title, not an actual title, but a better title. So we're gonna call it revenue by quarter so that we can actually see what this revenue is assessing, what it's analyzing, what it's giving us here. And then we're gonna come back to our clustered column chart. In our clustered column chart, we are going to take out that sum of revenue and we're gonna call it revenue by year. We're gonna call it revenue by year. So as you can see, we have revenue by quarter in the pie chart and we have revenue by year in the cluster. If you're interested in learning Power BI, if you're interested in learning Power BI, go over to my website, powerofthebi.com. Go over to my website, powerofthebi.com, and sign up for enrollment for the next class. Here's the deal. Class enrollment is extremely small. Class enrollment is extremely small, so enrollment will be limited. But go over to powerofthebi.com and sign up for enrollment. Column chart. Then we come over to the to our line, or I think it's the shaded area chart, and we're going to change that name as well. We're going to call that revenue by month. We're going to call that revenue by month. So now, as I said before, what I'd like to show different analysis for each visualization and not have the same visualization showing up too many times, multiple times in the same report, or at least on the same page. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of organize it a little differently. We're going to show the year up top using the clustered column chart, and then we've got to the left at the bottom we've got revenue by quarter, and then to the right at the bottom we've got revenue by month. So now we're showing year, quarter, month. So now again, as we have our slicers up top, you know, those slicers are going to pretty much be telling us some of the same thing, but it just gives us a little bit more control, a little bit more flexibility as how we want to see it. Now we're coming in, we're changing the color of the page. We're changing the color of the page so that the page just won't be a blank white page. Now, as you see, when we change the color of the page, now it really shows us what those visualizations on the page look like. And if we look up top, we see that we have the year slicer and the year drop down, both of the year drop downs and the quarter drop downs. You know, they look kind of wonky now, given that we can see how they really look. So we're gonna have to make some adjustments there. We're coming down to our card showing our 55 billion. We're showing the sum of revenue, the count of region, the count of product, the gross profit. And of course we wanted to organize that a little bit better, give it show the symmetry, a little bit of symmetry, I guess, what I'm trying to say when it comes to those four cards, and actually with the visualizations of the clustered column chart and the pie chart, as well as with our visual for the line chart as well. Now we're trying to make this thing look as symmetrical as we need it, or as aesthetically pleasing as we possibly can. And because, again, it's because we changed that background color of the page, that is what really exploded how those visuals really were not symmetric, or as symmetric as they could be or should be. So now we are just playing around with the different sizing to line our visualizations up as close as possible. And as you can tell, those dotted red lines, I think I said it before, but those dotted red lines allow us to see if a visual is lining up horizontally, vertically with another visual, with another visual. So that revenue by year on the clustered column chart, I dragged it down a little bit and it came to the top of the revenue by month in the line chart. So, now we're changing sizes, we're changing heights. It's about now, we've got the data. We've brought the data in as needed. And again, as I said before, early on, when we bring in data, that's pretty much, that pretty much is what our task as data engineers. But as Power BI developers, we have to play the role of a data engineer. We play the role of a graphic designer, because we've got to have that report. And really, a Power BI report should be very similar to a website. It's going to be very similar to a website. And when you publish that report is going to publish, out on the web, out on PowerBI.com. In this particular case, we are not using embedded Power BI. For those that don't know, embedded Power BI is when we embed a Power BI report into a website, so that you can log onto a website and you can see the actual Power BI report. So that's kind of why as from the graphic design standpoint, you want your Power BI report to be as sharp as possible, because you want it to have that look and feel of a website when you get that finished product. So here we are just lining up, and we're trying to keep everything as symmetric as possible. We're lining the top cards up with the top of the revenue by year clustered column chart, and the bottom cards we're lining up with the bottom of the revenue by year clustered column chart. And then the edges of the cards, we line the edges up with the revenue by month line chart. Now we are looking again at the text that we brought in, and we see that text is overlapping the product a little bit. So we're going to slide it over to the left, and we see that we have aligned the text with the top of the Apple logo, so that it does not overlap the product and it does not overlap the Apple logo. Now we're going to come back in, and we are going to try to align our slicers as best we can. The year, the 2 years, and the quarter slicers. Now we're trying to get this as aesthetically pleasing and symmetrical as possible. Kind of looking at the revenue by quarter, and we're going to do a little bit of formatting here. We're going to change the width. We could have spread it out, but rather than using the width sizing, what we did was we just used the drag element to make it the same width as the clustered column chart, and hopefully that revenue by quarter pie chart is the same width as the revenue by year, and it's the same height as the revenue by month in the line. Now we're aligning the slicers so that the slicers could get that element. So now what we're doing here is we took the one slicer and we put it to the edge of the text for revenue by the text for the revenue ink. Then we took the final slicer and we moved it to the right edge of the revenue ink. Now we're lining these slicers up. We see that they're not the exact same height. So now we're making sure they're the same height. We can look by the dotted lines so we can tell that they're the same height. So now we're really getting a better feel for what would make this report have the graphic design effect, the appeal. So now I want to test and see, would it make more sense to put the cards up top? So let's test, let's see, will we get a better look and a better feel if we bring the cards up top. So we've got the card for sum of revenue at 55 billion, account at the count of products at 5. So now it's test and see. Now we're testing and seeing just to see, you know, what really makes the most, well, I ain't gonna say what makes the most sense, but what makes this project, make this report, what really gives this report the feel that we're looking for. So we're gonna drag down the count of product, drag down the regions, drag down the product, and go the drop down for product, and we're gonna bring up the count of products. And we're just trying to see, you know, what is really going to give us the best look and feel for this particular report. So now we're going to drag the cluster column chart for the years over, and maybe make the logo just a little bit smaller, but we want it to have this, we want to make sure it's lined up with the height of the text. Now, what if we bring the cards down and move the slicer? So we got a slicer for year, we've got a slicer, another slicer for year, and we're going to bring that up. We're going to bring the other slicer up as well. We're going to bring the card down for gross profit. We're going to bring the slicer up for quarter, and we're going to bring the product drop down slicer. Let's see. So now, as you can tell, we're really at a point of just trying to test to see, you know, playing with the real estate to see where these slicers, where these different visuals will fit best, what would really make this report look its best as we are moving into the into finalizing this report. And this is when it gets tricky, because when you've got all the visuals in your report, and then you're like, I've got the visuals, but I don't necessarily know, or I'm not getting a good feel for if these visuals are in the correct place or not. It's going to be a matter of touch and go. It's going to be a matter of testing to see, you know, do we spread out the text to make the text wider across the page? The one thing we don't want to do right now is change the color of the background of the visuals, because and make it blend in with the background of the actual page, because then we can't really tell, or we'll lose the ability to tell the actual sizes, the shapes, and how these visuals are actually lining up. So it really gets tricky here. So as you can tell here, you know, I'm really kind of getting, not necessarily frustrated, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting the look and feel that I'm looking for, but at the same time, not changing the real estate of the page too much. As I change the size of the cards, of course, I want all the cards to pretty much have about the same height, the same width. But at the same time, as you can tell, when we're looking at the two cards would have sum of revenue and sum of gross profit, the number of characters on those cards is going to be slightly different than the characters on the count of the size of the characters on, well, the number of characters in count of region and count of product, because count of region and count of product is really only going to have one character being 7 and one character being 5 for count of region and count of product, whereas sum of revenue is going to be 55 BN, and gross profit is going to be 25 BN. So it really gets kind of tricky. But at the end of the day, that's our job. Our job is to make sure, as Power BI developers, to make sure that not only do we have the data, not only do we have the graphic design elements, and not only do we well, not only do we have the data, not only do we have the graphic design elements, but we want to combine making sure we have the correct data in addition to the graphic design elements, to where we have a project that is a Power BI report that is aesthetically pleasing, visually pleasing to the eye of the customer that will be looking at this report on an ongoing basis, whether it be a daily basis, a weekly basis, or however often this report is pulled up. We want to make sure that this report has pretty much the same look and feel, or a very similar look and feel as a website page, but at the same time has the data that is required to give the correct information, the proper information that the person that is trying to use this report, that the data is what they are looking for. So we have the data. So we're beyond, making sure that the data is right. We've got the data. Now we're trying to really design the look and feel, that graphic design look and feel of the Power BI report. You don't have to be a graphic designer, but you do need to have some sense of spatial awareness for a website page, for the lack of any better term. Again, we are at this point, we're just moving, playing with the visualizations to see which visualizations work best, what looks best in different positions, different locations on the report. So now, as you can see, we have brought the revenue by month to the top and made it even with the revenue on the same line, and the top line and bottom line as the revenue, as the region, and the product drop down slicers. And now we are lining up the revenue by quarter to the right of the revenue by month, and lining the revenue by year to the left by the region drop down, so that everything is lining up according to how we want this project to end. Now, as we can see, we are getting there. Now we are looking a whole lot better. We're looking, this page now is really to the point to where I'm like, all right, cool. I like this. I like where we're going here. Now it's just a matter of, is the formatting set to the nature, in which we like to have it. So what I just did here is I highlighted all three of the elements: the region, the product, and the revenue by month. I highlighted all three of those, and then I went to the format and I said distribute horizontally. And what that ended up doing was that gave us the same amount of space in between the region and product visualization, and the product and the revenue by month visualization. So now we pretty much have the spatial arrangement, or a pretty good idea of the spatial arrangement of where each one of the visualizations will finish up here in this Power BI report. So we are going to bring this report on home. We're going to bring this report on home as we have created the real estate, as I would like to say, have built out the real estate for where the visualizations will lie. So let's go back over to the report and look at what we have going on here. So we've built out the report. We've created the actual, the final, I can say the final, but the way that the visualization will fit onto the report. We're just testing out to see as we select the filters for the different years 2022, 2023, and 2024, making sure that everything is interacting. All the visualizations are interactive with one another. Here, selecting regions, making sure that the regions interactions are interacting as appropriately as supposed to be. This is just another checkpoint that we would use, or we would do when we get to the point to where we've built out our Power BI visualizations. As you can remember, we did have 2-year filters, 2-year drop downs. We're going to change one of these years, we're going to leave 1 year as is, and let's see, one, we have a year and we have a quarter. So what can we make this this second filter that's with the year drop down? But right now we're just going to continue to test. We're testing the quarters here to make sure that the quarters are interacting appropriately with each of the visualizations. Quarter 1, quarter 2, and quarter 4 selected. Quarter 1 and quarter 2 selected. Deselect all quarters. And product count is 5. So now we are going to start formatting the background images, well, the background colors of each one of our visualizations. Let's see, so sum of revenue, quarter drop down, year drop down, year drop down. Let's see, that height is 104, the width is 151. Let's see, can we round that to 150? Maybe. 103, we want to round that to 150 as well. 103 is the height. 104, that visualization is 104. We want that width. It's 140, 140, 104, 140, 104, 140, 104, 140, 104, 151. Let's see, 314, 149, 314. Height is 314, width is 175. Height is 314, width is 149. For our line chart, it's 314, width is 843. For our text, okay, format for our cluster column chart for the years. The visual border, we're going to turn the visual border on for the clustered column chart. We're going to set the rounded corners to be 10. Let's select the rounded corners to be 10 for the revenue quarter as well. So we're going to make the rounded corners standard. We want to keep it uniform, so we're going to keep the rounded corner. We're going to make all the visualizations with a rounded corner of 10. So now we're starting to see we're getting a little personality within the report now, given that we are giving rounded corners to each one of the visualizations. You don't have to give rounded corners to the visualizations. It's just what I like to do to give the visualizations a little personality, add some personality to the report. 10 is, I use 10 a lot for rounded corners. Sometimes I use 15 when I want to show it a little bit more rounded. I don't normally go more than 15 for rounded corners. So for our year slicers, each one of those we're adding the rounded corners of 10. For our cards, we're going to add the rounded corners of 10. Gross profit, we're going to make that one 10. For count of regions, we're going to make that 10. So as you can see, we're starting to get some personality now with our within the report. Now, to be honest, we could stop here once we do the rounded corners and have a pretty good report. But I'm gonna add some more flavor. I'm gonna add some more flavor so that it's not just black, white, and gray with the black outline, with the rounded corners, with the silver or the gray back, with the silver and gray page background. But this looks really good right here as we look here. But I'm just gonna start adding just a little bit more flavor. Hopefully I don't do too much to where I add too much flavor, and then we get to the point to where it really doesn't look well. What I'm doing here is I'm gonna highlight each one of these, and then I'm gonna drag the entire thing down, drag all of them down a little bit because they were touching my my text box. So just to get a little more space in between, so it won't like it's just all jumbled up together. But this looks pretty good. This looks pretty good. If I must say so myself. Yeah, I know that's a little corny, but anyway. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to canvas settings and canvas background. I see that this color is this gray color. So what I want to do is E6, E6, E6 is the hex color. So what I want to do is I want to make the background for my text box to have that same color. So I'm going to go in and I am going to copy and paste that color. I want to make sure I could just select the color here, or I could go in and I could paste it, but it's already selected. So I'm just going to choose what's already selected. I'm going to go in and what I want to do is select that color for each one of the visualizations. So now it's giving us the little, trying to think if we make all the visualizations the same color, what's that going to do? We could keep it, to where we have the white background as opposed to making everything gray with the black outline. But sometimes these like to be a little wonky. It's really, at this point, it's really up to you, because now this is just personal style and formatting. You can make these background colors any color you like. You could have left everything white if you wanted to. But just giving you some idea of what the formatting of the actual report would look like. But as you can see now, we've really added some personality. This could be a little too much of a monochrome look for some. It could not be in some cases for others, but it is what it is. At this point, it's personal preference. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the text box, and in the text box, I am going to make the width of the box a little bit thicker. We made the outline of the box white. Don't really like that white look though for the outline of the box. Let's see if we make it a little thicker. It's got a little bit more personality now by making it a little thicker. So now I'm going to test to see about adding adding the white outline and increasing that width. We should increase that width as well. If we don't increase the width, we can't really tell where the outline is. So I'm going to come back down. We're going to make that visual border to be black, to be white here on this year slicer. At this point, this is all personal preference. We can make these colors, these outlines to be any color we want. But at this point, it's pretty much personal preference. try to format that color to be white as well. I'm gonna make that color of that card visual to be white as well. Come back, we're gonna increase the size. We increase the size we'll increase the width to 5 so we can get more of a look, actually see that the outline of that border. So we increased it from 1 to 5. Now we're going to change that color back to black and increase the width to 5. That width is already 5, so we're going to change that color back. We'll change that color from white to black. And we're kind of getting the feel now that the black border is probably going to give us a better visual effect than the white border. Increase that width to 5. So we're going to change all the cards to be a width of 5 for the border and the color of the border to be black. Count of products is the last of the cards. So we are going to increase the width to 5. Go back to the text box. We're going to make that text box as uniform as the borders on the borders of the cards and the slicers. So we're going to change that to black and increase the width to 5. Let's see. Okay, let's go to the drop down slicer at region and let's think. Do we want to make this a white border or a black border? Let's go to format and let's go to visual border is already on. We're going to turn it off. We're going to visual border. We're going to turn that visual border off. And we're going to come to the visual border for the line chart and we're going to turn it off. So we don't have borders on the drop down for region, drop down for product, or the line chart. We are going to come over to the clustered column chart and we're going to format this one as well. We're going to go to effects. We're going to turn that border off and we're going to go to revenue by quarter and we're going to turn that border off. So now we only have borders on the title and on the slicers for year, quarter, and for the cards of revenue, profit, count of region, and count of product. So now we've got a little bit different type of personality going on with the Power BI report. So let's see now. We're going to highlight the cluster column chart. We're going to go to format, visual, and we're going to go to columns, and we're going to actually change the column from blue to white. Let's see. Because as we said before, early on, when we do, Apple likes to have that. Well, Apple has a trademark of a monochrome type look. So I'm trying to see, what looks best. Is it going to be best with white and the gray, or should we keep the blue, the default blue? I don't think so, because again, Apple has that monochrome type feel. So I'm just trying to get an idea of what's going to be the best color to add or to have to keep it monochrome. I'm kind of liking this darker gray. I kind of like that darker gray. So I'm going to go over to the pie chart, to the slicers, and I'm going to select, I want to go with the gray color for all of the pieces of the pie for the quarters that are variations of that color gray. Yeah, I'm kind of digging this a little bit. Kind of digging it. Then I'm going to come over to my line chart and try to format the line chart to have a similar effect as the pie chart and the clustered column chart. So let's see here. How can we change these colors? Where are these color schemes at? For the line chart. Expand all. I see color. There's the blue right there. So now let's choose one of these grays for the line chart. Okay. Now we've got pretty much that monochromatic type look with the black tone as an accent, because we use the black logo. We got the black border. Let's see here. So we're gonna select the region, which is Africa. Just see what that looks like. We're gonna select the year. So we got 2022, 2023, 2024. We've got the year here, and we have the year here. So what we want to do is take out that year and that second slicer, and we're going to go to our date hierarchy, and we are going to take out, we already have a quarter. We have a quarter here, we've got a quarter here. Let's take that date out again. Let's bring back in the date hierarchy and drop down, create the hierarchy, and we are going to take out day, year, quarter, and it's going to leave us the month. So now we have the month as opposed to 2 years for the drop down slicer. Then we have that region, which is, that sum of revenue, which is a little bit bigger than the count of region and count of product cards. So now we're just trying to get as uniform as possible. We know that the gross profit and the sum of revenue is going to be pretty close in size, and the count of region and the count of product, they're going to be pretty close in size. So what I want to see here, year, quarter, month. And if we format, we highlighted all of them, and we're going to distribute horizontally. So we have the spacing would be the same in between each one of the slicers and the cards on that particular row. The category label, we're going to turn that off for the sum of revenue. We're going to go to title, and rather than having sum of revenue as a category label, we're just going to call this card revenue. We're going to do the same thing for the gross profit card. We're going to go to the visual, turn off the category label, go to general, turn on the title, and we're going to call this profit. Going to come over to the count of regions. We are going to turn off that category label. We're going to call that title regions. We're going to go to visual. We're going to turn off that category label. And the same we're going to do for gross count of product. We're going to call the title product. We're going to go over to the visual, the format of the visual, and turn off that, looks like, I don't think I turned that off, I'm not sure. We can't see it. We'll turn off that category label for products. Now what I want to do is I want to show shadows behind each one of the card and the drop down to year, quarter, and month. So now it kind of gives almost like a 3D effect. So now we've got almost a 3D effect on the top, on that second row. And we now have pretty much created the Power BI report for what we'd like to call the Apple Inc. revenue. And again, I would like to again emphasize that this is not the actual data from Apple.